Hey everybody, welcome to Thru Port Collective and our wonderful little cottage industry of a live stream that we do here on YouTube with all our friends and old and new. Welcome to 2023. We're going to have a fun show tonight, and I'm going to pass off to Marshall because Marshall wanted to say a couple things, but welcome.
Hi.
And thanks for being here. Hi.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
We got our flux capacitor all messed up last week, guys. So sorry about that, but we're here.
Yeah.
We're going to do kind of a year in review a little bit, I think, right?
Yep.
Cool. Little year backwards and a little year forwards.
Yeah.
Yes. Just dipping our toes into 2023.
So how was Christmas for everybody? We want to hear about your goodies.
Did you get anything, Tim?
I got this. I'm pretty stoked about getting this. It's the 4LP
Hold on, I'll make it big.
revolver.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I haven't even had a minute to play it yet, which is sad. But I don't want to put it on in like background music. I want to sit there, between the speakers and listen, especially to the new mixes that are stereo. Yeah, so I just didn't want to put it on until I had undivided attention to give to it.
That's cool. Anything else?
I mean, really, no. I think I'd sort of my biggest things happened, a couple months before that.
Yeah.
Well, that mix is cool. They were using what was it? So, I can't remember. I posted a video with Giles Martin talking about it was who was a producer of the video they just did about the Let It Be sessions.
Oh, right. I can't remember his name. Yeah. I can't recall.
Just
It's
lost
there.
it, right? Jackson or something, or what was it?
Anyway.
So they had some special software that they used, and with the later albums there was a lot of multi-tracking and kind of the mid-era. They were using either 4 tracks or 2 4-tracks chained together, and until they eventually got to 16, I think. And one of the clever things is that there was so much bouncing on those albums, like on Revolver, that how do you go back and remix a lot of that stuff or restore it without restoring the whole rhythm section at once? And so they had software that isolated each of the instrument tracks and allowed Giles to pull it out and redo things and go over it. So there's a lot of clarity to it. And it's a great listen. I mean, one of the difficult things about those remixes, and it's actual remix, not just a remaster, but a remix. And one of the difficult things is that you hear things at different levels that you're not used to, and especially been listening to this stuff for most of your life, it can be a little bit different. Like, oh, that's not the right level, or that's not what I'm used to hearing it. But it's fun because you can really hear a lot of detail in those recordings. So I've been really enjoying them, and I've listened through Revolver already a number of times. So I'm deeply hoping that we'll get Magical Mystery Tour next, and then Rubber Soul after that. But I guess we'll see. What about you, Marshall?
I didn't get anything exactly on Christmas, all right? Like,
Uh-huh.
I did, we had talked about some of the synths I had on my list, my short list recently, and one of those was the Kurzweil K2500X. Well, I did finally purchase one of those on Reverb, which is cool, but it was right before New Year's, basically, so I've had to kind of wait till this guy came back, and we're going to work out the shipping here soon. So that's a really cool synth that I've been after for a couple of reasons. I've been kind of gobbling up some of the some of the 90s synthesizer things. And one of the reasons is I want to try and be able to reproduce some of the original soundtrack from the Halo video game, the Combat Evolved, that was composed by Martin O'Donnell. and one of the synths he used was K2500. And so now I've got one. So I think that was the last one that I needed to kind of complete the set of instruments he had at the time. So I should be able to fully recreate some of those really cool tracks. I'm excited.
So, culture of Gus got slippers.
Well, there you go.
I was saying, so did I.
I think I little on them or something.
Oh, man.
Gotta keep your feet warm while you're playing your instruments.
Yeah,
definitely. How much looking around did you have to do, Marshall, to find that Kurzweil?
Well, so there's a couple on Reverb, and they vary wildly in terms of price. But the biggest issue wasn't that. The biggest issue was finding somebody that would ship it. A lot of the sellers of those, for whatever reason, don't want to ship them. And it's probably because they're really big, really heavy, and they have a hard drive in them. So I think I talked to one guy in North Carolina that I was thinking about just driving up there and trying to get it. But I was like, can we work out something to where we get this shipped? Not that far away, or I can come up and get it or whatever. But he was like, yeah, it's got a hard drive in it, and I don't want to ship it. And so I was like, okay. So I found a guy in Connecticut that had one, and it had a hard case with it. So we just ship it right in the hard case. So I think it's going to work out better.
That's awesome, though.
Yeah.
So you'd been seeing them at least for a while. You knew there was a good chance you were going to find one.
I've been looking for one of these for quite a while. So this one's not in the most... It's in pretty good condition, but it's definitely got some wear on it, which is fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's an older device. It's going to have some stuff.
Yeah, and it's not like it needs to be in pristine. It's not like a show piece necessarily. Like, I don't hear anyone ever really talk about the Kurzweil workstations, really, except for what's the new one that they came out with recently, the 2700. They came out with a new one recently, and that's the only time I really heard anyone even talk about them. So I'm kind of excited.
Yours again was the K2500X. Is that correct?
That's the one I picked up because it kind of covers a lot of territory of some of the older ones as well, is what I have read anyways.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it probably sounds great. And it said what we read earlier before the show, it was $20,000 list
when
price.
It was new. Yeah, what?
When it was
did it have
new.
Do you still have that pulled up, Chris? That Vintage Synth Explorer article on that?
Yeah, let me.
I wonder what the release year was.
And I think like the Corrigan one in about 2000 was about $2,000.
Oh,
let's see. There it is.
Yeah, right.
And
that's it. 88 keys. I never had a synth with 88 keys.
That's huge, man. Though it's going to be massive.
96, right? Is that what it says? Date produced 96.
Let me go. Let's see here.
You go up a little bit. It's on the right-hand side.
Oh, there we go.
Down a little bit.
1996.
Yeah.
There you go.
There it is.
That's kind of what I was thinking. It'd be mid or late 90s. Wow.
I thought it was actually a little older than that, but maybe I'm thinking of the K2000 or the K2500.
Yeah, the other version maybe.
Yeah, and they made a couple versions that have sampling capabilities. I don't know that this has the X has that. I think there's an SX that has sampling.
Oh,
I think
up to 120 megabytes of sample RAM. I mean,
there you go.
I don't know if that means
RAM, man. 20.
I don't know if it surely you can. Yeah, look out. 20 grand will buy you that.
Yeah,
when you're a big spender.
That's got to be a pretty impressive instrument for back then.
I'm sure.
Yeah. This is like what I when I started playing guitar. This is I started playing guitar before this, but these kind of workstation things are what I thought of when people said synthesizers, because that's all I saw anybody play, except for when I listened to classic rock stuff, and I know that they had used like lots of old Moogs and stuff like that. And I was like, why do I only see these things? Why don't I see any of the classics out? But never saw anybody playing vintage stuff ever. But I mean, you can understand it, right? I mean, like this thing can do so much.
Yeah. It's still got some value, I think. I think especially for what I'm kind of wanting it for. I I mean, otherwise I don't think I'd be looking for one, honestly. But
Yeah, and it's probably got a sound, right? I don't know what it's.
I don't know
what
either.
does it say?
That's going to be the fun part. It's
You know,
kinda-
it'll be cool though. It'll have a vibe, I'm sure.
yeah.
That's fun.
Hopefully a good one.
Yeah, man, you're right.
So yeah, that was my kind of Christmas time present to myself, synth-wise. And still got my eye out for the Voyager, a Moog Voyager.
Nice.
And Nordlead 2. And then the third wave has started shipping recently. I don't know if you guys remember that. That's like a remake of the PPG.
Yeah.
Just saw one up on Reverb today.
Oh, did you? Already, huh? Somebody.
That's quick.
Yeah, because those just started shipping, I think, pretty recently. That's one I've kind of got. I kind of want to see what that's all about. But then I think about, like, I've got a Quantum, which kind of covers some of that PPG-ish stuff. But I want to see, sometimes you get an instrument like that and you think it's similar to something you have, and it's totally not. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and sometimes the workflow of the things, can make a big difference in how much you use it if you really feel like you connect with the interface. I played the third wave at NAMM several times and talked with the guys, and it's a great sounding synthesizer, and I like the layout on it, and it's again one of those synthesizers that I would love to have in the stable, but don't think I ought to spend the money on it right now. Got plenty of other stuff I still need to dive into.
That's where I'm at too.
Mm-hmm.
Although I did finally take shipment of the XPO, the Make Noise module, Eurorack module that I mentioned last time. I think I had just gotten it. Well, it had a defect.
Oh,
so
no.
Yeah, and so I had I went back and looked. I had pre-ordered it in August 20th, and it came in on like December 8th. And then I hooked it up. It sounded fine for about 2 seconds, and then it stopped working. And now I will say, in Make Noise defense, and the dealer I bought it from, 3-Wave Music, is in New Jersey. Both of them were really immediately helpful in offering up solutions, but I have to ship it back. So there's a turnaround there, and then I don't know yet if they have modules that they can replace it with. So I'm super bummed because it sounded so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it
so
had
cool
a
that it
problem.
exploded.
I guess, or I don't know what I did. I was having too much fun. Plugging stuff. I don't know what I did. Anyway, nothing. It's just my luck this time.
So Andy got an old Roland GR1, which, man, I remember those a long time ago back in the day. In fact, let me pull it up on the screen here, because it was a guitar synthesizer from Roland. Now they had done stuff before, but this was a digital one. And here, let's see. Come on now.
Come
It's
on now.
loading.
My brother had the bass guitar version of that.
Oh yeah.
But that was in the 80s, so it might have been an older one.
Trying to find.
It didn't track super great, but like good enough to play like Cro-Magnon bass lines.
All right, so here's some pictures of it. Let me pop it up here.
Pop it up there.
Or here we could go like this. And yeah, so I remember these like way back in the 90s. And let me see if I can zoom in here. So it was this, giant foot pedal controller, and then you used a hex pickup on your guitar, if I'm recalling correctly, and Annie can tell us. But I remember sitting and playing one of those. Again, I wasn't into synthesizers at that time, but playing a guitar through a guitar synthesizer, I was like, man, this is crazy. There's all these sounds in here. Now I hear stuff like that. I'm like, it's kind of crazy. But I think this is a digital one, right, Andy? Let's see. GR1 tracks really well. 13-pin connector. Cool. Yeah. That's fun. I find like since I play guitar better than I play keyboards. Hey, why am I there? Okay, there we go. That it sometimes when I'm composing, it's just easier to do it with the guitar because I can hear the notes and play them, the way they're supposed to be played, really quick, and then later go in and if I have to retrack something, can do it with the keyboard. But that's fun. That's a cool little gift.
That is cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, takes me back to like the '90s guitar centers. It's being in there. They always had one of those set up. I think I told you guys about my Christmas gifts last time, and I had. So I was, well, with all the craziness in this year, one thing I did actually get to later in the year was selling some gear. Like I had sold some gear in probably January or something, and then I just sold a bunch more. So probably about $3,500 worth of gear I unloaded, which was nice because if I'm not using it, and it's crazy that I still had most of that was still guitar equipment that was just extra stuff that I didn't need. So I turned it around, and the precision bass behind my shoulder there was that was a Christmas gift, and then the little Mustang bass that's a short scale on the other wall there was just taken out of the stuff that I had sold because I'd really wanted one of those, and one of my buddies had it for sale. He's like, and it just sounded really great, really dug playing with it. I think it's going to be a great compositional tool because some of the styles of music I want, like there's just something about that kind of short scale Fender sound that just nothing sounds like it. So yeah, pretty much that stuff for me. I mean, I've picked up a few other things here and there, but those are the big ones, I guess.
Cool.
Another sitar with case. I'm looking at Synthetic there. He's bought another sitar with case for $100.
Nice.
Those are hard to play, I understand, from guitar players. I've never tried.
Yeah, I've always wanted a sitar because I love sitar music. We got Ravi Shankar albums and various stuff. Of course, George Harrison of the Beatles. So through that, I always love the sound of that. But had a couple of buddies with the Jerry Jones and Dan Electro, like electric sitars, like
Yeah.
those are kind of cool. I mean, they don't sound like acoustic sitars, and they definitely sound a little more westernized, but they're a very fun instrument to play.
Absolutely.
Well, do you want to show that Chat GPT, Marshall?
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing is crazy.
I am blown away by what is happening in the AI space right now. Like, this is game-changing territory, folks, because it's only going to get better from here. So this guy here, and I saw this video a few weeks ago. It showed up in my feed because I'm a nerd and I search for this stuff. So I saw this and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." I didn't even think about posting it to the Facebook group until Music Radar picked it up. I was like, "Oh yeah, I should share this." So I did. So this is our future AI overlords starting to get really smart. And what this guy did, he queried a chat bot. This is Chat GPT, and basically it's a vast language bot basically, and you can query it and ask it questions or whatever. But one of the interesting things that this does that I've never seen anything do that like this is you can ask it to write code for you for an app or a program or whatever, and it covers a lot of different programming languages as well. I asked it the other day, like, how many languages it knows, and it was like, "Oh, I know like a lot," and it gave some examples, but it's pretty impressive. So it's limited in certain ways. Like it's not gonna, you can't just say like, "Write me an app that'll do XYZ." You have to be more tactful about how you ask it. and do it in like increments, but it's enough to where if you don't know how to code, it's actually a good learning tool, I think, as well, to kind of teach yourself how to do some of this stuff. But so he tried to make an overdrive pedal, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
And it didn't come out quite sounding like an overdrive, but the fact that it was able to produce any kind of audio at all, and it even generated the UI, the GUI for it, it's like amazing.
It's crazy.
Amazing. I mean, chatbots, I remember back however many years ago, you talked to a stupid robot, and it's, obviously a robot. But now it's like writing code for you. This blows my mind.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see him go through that. I mean, we've been playing around with the AI art, and that's fascinating. And I think we're on like the doorstep of big changes in the world because of this kind of stuff. And then to see somebody go through and create, I mean, it needs some more tools to be able to do this really well. Like you said, like its first iteration was kind of sounded like a bit crusher or something.
Sure.
But if somebody could, incorporate some sort of modeling software into it where you could hand them or you could, have it check out the schematic of a tube screamer and see what it thinks it would do and that kind of stuff, that would be interesting.
Well, so I know a little bit of C#, and so and I've done some development for like HoloLens. This is like many years ago now, but so I've worked with Unity, I've worked with C#, I've done some real basic like game design before, and so I asked this thing to help me write like a program for Pong to make a Pong clone, and it's pretty good. And then I asked it like, where are you getting this from? Are you pulling this from a forum? Because these AIs they're trained, right? So the information, they're either fed or they scoop it up from online. And it said no, it was like creating it on its own, which is pretty incredible.
That's wild.
So it knew what Pong was, and it knew how Pong worked, and without any input, I didn't have to tell it what it was, and it started spitting out code for Pong. Amazing. So, and then as this gets better, because I think what happens is it can't deal with complex mathematics because it's more language. So there's going to be some issues with math if you need to do certain things like that. And then they also, I've seen some other people talk about how if the code gets too complex, it'll kind of mess it up. So for advanced stuff, the devs are cool. Like, you guys aren't going to lose your jobs. So, yet.
Not anytime soon, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's going to be a while. But, in other words, like, I think this can help relegate some of the really kind of boring parts. And then when, it can help you build like a framework and then kind of go from there. So, and that's, it applies to our industry in terms of the music production side of things. I'm thinking, obviously VSTs for effects and synths and all that stuff. I mean, eventually one day you might just be able to say, make me a 909 clone VST or whatever, and boom, there you go.
Yeah,
I'm thinking go ahead, Tim.
No, that's it. Go ahead.
I'm just thinking like, even if you could have that kind of voice input for mods on a plugin. So, for instance, like the Ibanez Tube Screamer came out in, what was it, the late 70s or early 80s. I've had some 80s versions of them. And very basic circuit, op-amp overdrive, clips diodes, resistors, capacitors, buffers. That not really a lot there. And it became a platform after, Stevie Ray Vaughan kind of made it famous that in the 90s, when kind of the old stuff was coming back into style, a lot of guys started recreating the classics in kind of boutique form and, making them in the garage or the kitchen table or whatever. And a lot of them ended up being these like very slight variations on the Tube Screamer or other classic overdrive or distortion devices. And, they would change the diodes to LEDs for the clipping, or they would give it more bass or a little more gain or whatever it was. Some of the most famous ones were, I mean, really, like, you didn't need to know a whole lot of electronics to change something out. And it was a lot of experimentation. And I've built tons of pedals like this where you start experimenting, see how you want to change a sound. But, if we had it in the box and you had whatever the effect was, let's say it is like a saturation device, and you yourself could feed in text to modify it, you could have a really unique variation on some classic for yourself. So you're like, tell the bot, like, hey, I want to start with a Tube Screamer, but I would like it to have 30% more gain on the top end, reduce the pre-gain stage bass a little more, add, shift the center of the tone frequency. Those kind of things would be really an interesting idea that I think a lot of people would enjoy geeking out over. And there was like or there is a plugin that's it's a free plugin out there called BYOD, Build Your Own Overdrive. And in a way, I mean, without the AI element, allows you to do some of those things where it gives you kind of a modular playground to build an effect. And so you could say take the style of clipping from one pedal, like say an Electro-Harmonix Big Muff Pi, have that kind of distortion circuit, but then feed it into the tone control of a Tube Screamer and give it, the characteristics of some other pedal, and then you build these modules together and it's GUI, and then you create, your own overdrive. But it would be kind of an interesting thing to have it, be voice driven in some way and say, hey, change it like this, or I want it more like this. So people that are less technically inclined can have some ability to experiment and try different things that they wouldn't normally be able to do.
Pretty fascinating.
It's like Jarvis from Iron Man, right?
Uh-huh.
He's in his little thing and he's telling it like, oh yeah, paint that gold and red, just do this. So it's going to be interesting in the next few years. See how this all evolves, and I think we're probably going to see some governments get involved into trying to regulate this. But when the cat's out of the bag, how do you even control this? But now you're going to start seeing people, especially in like for YouTube and stuff, things like that. People will start generating AI scripts and just using those.
Yeah. I saw an ad on Facebook or Instagram today that was kind of like an AI generated spokesperson. And so the advertising was like, if your company needs training videos, you type out a text for it, and then you select the avatar that you want, and it showed like this 30-year-old white guy, and he's like, and with whatever the text was typed in, or you can change it to a gal or somebody that looks different or whatever. And I thought it was, because a lot of that kind of technology has been really kind of, hinky sounding and not so great. I mean, it sounds, even the beginnings with Siri and things like that, but they've really gotten it to be a lot better, where the inflections and, the way that the tonal structure is of how we talk throughout a sentence is a little bit better replicated.
Oh yeah, the cadence and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's really good actually, because I playing with this chatbot. I had it write me some stories. Like I asked it to make like a comedy about aliens on the other side of the galaxy or something, and it wrote some ridiculous thing about Zargons and all that stuff. It's hilarious. It is actually amazing. And then what I did is in the browser, I'm a Microsoft guy, so I like to use Edge. Don't kill me. But in Edge, there's actually a read aloud option, and it will read the text for you, and you can actually select different voices. So I had it read it, some British accent guy read it, because I think the British, when they talk about funny things, makes it even more funny. So it did a pretty good job. I thought it was pretty funny.
Yeah, that ad I saw. I mean, I didn't look into it or anything, but the it looked really good. I mean, it looked a photorealistic person talking and saying whatever you wanted it to say. It was quite clever.
I mean, and you think about all the possible applications, and I'm thinking specifically about like teaching people stuff. So like if somebody wanted to take a course on like learning music production or mixing or synthesis, you could just literally script it all and then have some robot read it and then make these little lessons, because the problem is like some people are really smart, but they don't have the, what do you call it? The presence to be a presenter or a educator or anything like that. This kind of solves that for some of those people too. So,
and the other thing too is it opens up to people from different areas. So, already seen it on YouTube that there's some channels that are doing like gear news, but they aren't from the Western world. So they have a bot read out the text. So whatever gear they're talking about, and some of that stuff is not done as well. But it in the same way, if like as you were saying, like if a person doesn't have that kind of charismatic presence, or if they just don't speak English very well, you now have access to a market that's huge when you get most of the Western world in some way, either first or second, speaking English. That say you're living in Vietnam and you can read it and write it, but you don't speak it so well that you can put out content that people find useful, and you can teach and do all those kind of things, and have the bot be the voice and personality of it.
Yeah, and it's only going to get better. And this is already kind of freaking me out a little bit. I mean, the thing writes code. Unbelievable.
My wife's on a psychology forum, and there was somebody in there that was freaking out about the stuff, and it was not even as clever as the stuff that we're talking about. It was like the just some of the more simple AI stuff, but freaking out about it, Skynet type stuff.
I mean, and this is the thing that kind of has me keep one eye open. Is that this is the stuff that we know about and that we can actually use today publicly. Think about the stuff we don't even know about.
Right.
And I think it was a couple years ago, Elon was on Joe Rogan, and he was talking about like how crazy AI was. And that was already a few years ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and he would know, using the AI for his cars and everything, all the self-driving stuff, that's all AI.
I mean, hopefully what it will be is a way for a technology to be more transparent in our lives.
Yeah, but the thing that worries me the most about that is as helpful as this can be, you look at what all these other tech companies do, and they just suck all your data. They spy on you, they do all this stuff, and that's what makes me worried about this. Like, how do you fight an AI that's like smarter than you? How do you resist that if it's in the wrong hands? That's what I worry about, that stuff.
Well, I mean, people are already dealing with this because the algorithms that govern most of social media are already making those decisions for you. And people, I think, that are unconscious of that have a harder time. They get sucked into it. I mean, what's that guy, Darren Brown? I don't know if you guys have seen any of his stuff. I haven't seen a whole lot, but the stuff I've seen was interesting in that he's, I don't know what you would call him. Not I wouldn't say like an illusionist or something, not quite that, but he uses psychology to do these seemingly magical tricks on people. And, for one, they had these, I don't know, two gals or something. They said, "Hey, we're going to take you to the studio. We're going to do this stuff." And so they drove in the car, and it shows them, and they get to the place, and he's like, I want you to think of, an animal or a monster or something, and have it in your head. And I'm going to draw something out here, and goes through this whole thing with them. And it's been a while since I've seen it, so I don't remember all the details. But the thing is, like, when he gets done, I mean, he sat there and drawn something out, and he said, "Can you describe it to me?" And they go through and they describe it, and then he turns it around and he's got the thing that they described. And he would have had no idea, what they were making up. But they showed how they did it, and they introduced elements along the car ride that they would have, kind of subconsciously seen, that influenced the decision of what kind of monster they would have dreamed up in that office. And so it seems unbelievable, but it's really just psychology, and these algorithms are finding, these computers are finding the patterns of human psychology and exploiting them. And so I think the thing is, like, it can be both positive and negative, particularly depending on how aware you are. If you are aware of what's going on, it's not going to affect you as much. But if you don't know it and you're just flowing down the river with everybody else, that's kind of a scary thing.
I would agree with you, except for one thing. The thing is that this can be tailored probably to specific individuals because, they want to sell you stuff. These companies want to sell you stuff, which is fine. I understand that. But when they know all this stuff about you, they can figure out your specific, how your mind works. And even a person paying close attention, if they understand how you are specifically, they can probably get around that. And that's a little unnerving.
Yeah. Well, again, it comes down to how conscious you are about stuff. Because if you know that the ads you're being shown have been, tailored to you, then you can have some sort of control over it.
Well, I wish that was the case, but we still haven't really solved the privacy problem already with just regular social media and how that all works.
Yeah.
So, and this is going to make that a way bigger problem, I think.
Yeah. I'm in your camp on that, and I agree. Mainly what I'm talking about is, like, we are living in this situation no matter what.
Yeah.
So until there are things that govern it a little bit better, at the very least, between the choice of not being involved at all, in which case we all wouldn't know each other, without Facebook and YouTube and all that. But at least we can kind of minimize. I don't know what minify. Guess I was on to the next, MIDI topic or something. But minimize the effect that it has on us. Yeah. And that's what I one of the things that frustrates me about anything, but the music world is like this, is that people aren't willing to take responsibility for their own choices and cognition about things. And so when I hear things like, I hate synthesizers or whatever it is that have too many options on it, I get stuck and I can't make music because I'm lost in all the options. Like, well, that's kind of bull. Like, you have the ability to narrow things down and make choices and limit yourself. You don't need the piece of hardware to limit it for you. You can make that decision. You just don't want to.
Right. Well, I learned a long time ago, it's not the hardware, it's the person wielding the hardware. And that was a tough pill for me to swallow early on, because I found a guy, this was during the MySpace days, like we're talking mid 2000s-ish, somewhere around there. And there was a guy I found on there who had a bunch of pictures of all his amazing equipment, all this cool stuff like Nord leads and like really cool stuff for the time. And I listened to his music and it was awful. And I was like, how is that even possible? This guy has some of the coolest stuff, and it sounds like that,
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's very prevalent.
The tool, it's the person using the tool, really.
Yeah, and that goes to like the AI art also, that it's capable of doing some amazing things, but what I can make it do versus even what you can make it do, Marshall, like you're at another level of ability with that. And so it still comes down to, the person guiding the process. I mean, the tools are beyond what I can get out of AI art, because I just don't have all the tools or skills needed to make really fantastic art, and that really comes down to how much time I'll put into it.
Almost, you're right. It's like the same thing. It's trying to figure out what combination of certain things are going to produce the best result.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually kind of hard with the AI art stuff, because you're prompting it and you don't really know what it's going to take from what you tell it.
Yeah.
As you kind of go through and you just mess around with it, you can kind of start to see certain things. And then there's people online who have videos that will tell you, like, oh, this prompt does this or that, and that's helpful also. But combining all those things to create something original and getting something good that you might actually want to use or have around, that can be a little challenging with some of them. But that's going to get better too. Like, I mean, right now we're still. It feels like we're past kind of the beginning stages. We're kind of like in intermediate for some of this stuff. Like, it's getting pretty good, but it's not like you can just say it in some of the most generic text and have it produce something amazing every time. But it might get there eventually.
Yeah, I think it will. It's coming along. It'll be interesting. As you said, like the what happens next. Things are getting faster and faster right now. We haven't hit the plateau yet, so
no.
Imagine this next 10 years are going to be crazy.
When you were talking about that album that was remastered, where they remixed it by separating the multi-track elements, and they probably used AI for that. There's AI that will do that already. I think it works better with some of the stuff I've seen, like, was it D-Reser or I can't remember what it's called. There's an AI tool that you can download and train it yourself if you want. And it can pull things out like vocals or like the drum track and stuff. And depending on how you train it will affect like how well the results are in terms of pulling out those elements, which I thought would have never been possible. I remember thinking, like, music is one of those things where once you are mix it, produce it, and push it out, like, it's impossible for somebody to like tear it apart. And now you got computers that can do it, which is weird.
Yeah, Andy mentions Synaptic and Isotope RX. I was thinking about Isotope RX because that has used it for a while, and there's been some things where, like, you play a part of the audio, even several versions ago at least, you would play a part of the audio that has a lot of noise in it, or it's isolated. It learns where those frequencies are and then applies it to other parts in the song, so it's not removing your instruments but just the noise. And
the noise, which is hard to do sometimes, because because normally what you do is you take a little sample of it and you invert it to cancel it out, but the problem is sometimes the little snip that you grabbed isn't exactly the same throughout the whole track or whatever, so it doesn't quite eliminate all of it. But this stuff is really good at figuring that out and actually wiping out the noise that you don't want.
Yeah, I've used it on some pretty bad audio stuff where there was stuff going on in the background that was changing. And even, I mean, like, I've got the AirPods Pro, whatever the latest one is, 2. And I was noticing, because I've had noise canceling headphones before, and some are better than others. And I tried to get some other brands of, noise canceling earbuds that were a lot cheaper. And I kept trying them, like, no, these are terrible. They're going back. These ones have been incredible as far as the noise canceling. And, it's got that kind of digital processing going on in there. And I was noticing, like, I was out on a walk the other day and, just started really, sorry, just bumped the mic. I've been using these a lot on walks recently. And I've noticed, like, there's some guy started up a blower and I'm moving and different things are going, a car's going by and all these different elements. And it allowed my audio experience to be very quiet, and I could just hear the ambient music I was listening to. And that's pretty radical because, again, like you said, it's not a static thing. It's constantly adjusting and moving things around to do that, and you're not having to think about it.
Yep. Well, and the same thing is happening also with microphones, and I know, like, especially with after the lockdowns and stuff, a lot of people start working from home, and they got their kids running around and all this stuff. But they have developed really good acoustic technology in the microphones now, to where it'll eliminate within a certain amount of like area around you, it'll eliminate all that sound, and that's all AI stuff too. So
yeah,
it all plays together.
Well, we're getting to the point where we're going to forget like how good that we have it, because it happens. Again, it's so transparent in what it does. I mean, you know, some things are still kind of getting to that level, but so many of these things that are happening now, again, are done on a sort of a transparent way that we're not recognizing the noise canceling that's going on. It just sounds better.
It happens.
Or we're not. Yeah, we're not noticing that I mean, like some of the new Apple computers will track your face as you're moving around and you're on your video conference. It'll keep with you. I mean, that's a simple thing to do, but it just makes that quality of life just a little bit better.
And they've had that tracking technology for a long time, but it was relegated to like really expensive PTZ cameras and like high-end video conferencing units and stuff. But now you can get it like it does on your phone, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll probably talk some more about the AI stuff. I'm sure it's not the last we've heard of this. So stay tuned. I'm interested in it. I think it's really neat, but it's also kind of freaking me out a little bit. But like you said, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. So probably need to pay attention and see what you can glean from it, so you don't get left in the dust, at least.
Yeah. Well, we've got like kind of a let's say like basically three things that we want to talk about for the rest of the show, right? And so we talked about discussing some of our favorite hardware and software of the year, just some things that we're personally using, and that's something that we definitely want to hear from the chat about. Also, experiences of 2022, what did you learn? And also 2023, where do we go from here? Like what order do you guys want to take those? What do you want to do first? Favorites before or favorites after?
Why don't we do the reverse look first?
Okay.
Why don't we take a look back and see where we just came from?
All right, so thinking back to 2022, and again, this is for everybody like in the chat, like want to hear from you guys, because this is what we're about, like learning from one another, the collective. What was your music making experience this last year? Let's say like what are the things we had a hard time with? What are the things that we were working on? What were some of the successes that we've had? I don't know. Who wants to start us off?
Yeah, I'll start with that one. So we all know, because I've been talking about it for a long time, I've been working on my live rig. Well, guess what, guys? It's pretty much ready to go. And I was able to actually produce a full track and play it live. And I got this little guy up here. This is that Morningstar MC6. So, and the cool thing is that this is what I'm using to control my Ableton session. And one of the biggest difficulties I've had is trying to figure out, like, hey, so not only do I have to hook all this stuff up and program the Blue ARP and then figure out how to play stuff and do all the sounds, like, those are all kind of normal issues when you're doing something like that. But then I also wanted to figure out, like, how am I going to actually transition not only between songs and patches and all these other things. I'm going to control that stuff in Ableton, but I still needed a way to be able to switch scenes in Ableton without my hands, because my hands are going to be playing on the keyboard. So I'm not going to have another hand grow out of my back to change that. So found this pedal. That was a huge game changer for this, and actually allowed me to complete the full setup. So that was my big struggle this last year, was trying to figure out all that stuff and get it all working, and it's turned out really great.
And that track that you made is killer.
Oh yeah, thanks. Yeah,
we've lost Chris. Yeah, it's It's badass, and so this is the first time you've gotten to implement that setup, really, for an entire tune.
Exactly. The way I would normally do it if I was producing a track from scratch is here. But doing it live is like this whole, and it makes it so fun. Like I can't explain how fun it is, because the flexibility you have in what you're doing it just makes it fun to do.
Yeah.
Sometimes sitting here producing, like you record one little thing and then you make it perfect and then you do it, this is kind of like setting up all the tools to be able to do all that, but live, and have the dynamic range to where you can actually change things in real time. So you're not locked into a solid set, because I know, back in the day you'd use a sequencer and you're kind of locked in to how that track is done, and you got to stay on your times or you're going to mess everything up. This is not like that. This is super flexible. And that's what makes it really fun, I think.
I wonder,
thanks to clip launching, right? So it's basically the architecture of clip launching.
Did you see this?
Did you?
Yeah, I put it up.
I didn't see it. I'm sorry. That's hilarious. I do need one of those.
And then being able to switch it on the fly. So yeah, you can create compositions out of just pieces that are little ideas that you can assemble, basically.
Right. And what I've done is I've designed it to where I have a full track, but the cool thing is I don't have to play it the same way every time. I can introduce different elements at different times. I could go longer on a certain section if I want to. I'm not tied into that actual format, which one of the guys I really like to watch and has been an inspiration for me is Kebu on YouTube. And he's got all this vintage analog gear, which is probably got to be a huge nightmare, because I'm sure those things break all the time. But it's a massive setup that he has. And one of the things I remember hearing him saying, it might have been on GeoSynth's one of those shows where he went like all day and he had Kebu on for that. I think he was saying something like that was one of the things he would like to fix about his setup, because he's kind of tied into a set list and he can't change too much. He can't have as much fun with the performance side.
I wonder, does this sound similar to you? Because, back in the 90s, with my guitar rig playing live, I mean, it was the grunge era, but yet at the same time, there was still a whole bunch of rack stuff going on. And I was fascinated with, the big rack effects like Eventide H3000 and Lexicon PCM stuff. I also was looking at that stuff, and I had a few different things, some Alesis and Lexicon stuff, but I could just never really jive with it in my rig. And one of the things I hated is that I was using presets and programs and MIDI control, and I didn't really have any real-time control of it. So I always gravitated more towards a pedal board, where I could immediately change the sound, or I could, I got used to using my foot a lot to turn knobs and stuff in real time while I was playing. Is that the kind of feel that you have? Like you have more control when you can bring things in and out?
That's exactly right. Although mine is, I've programmed this pedal to where it's able to scroll around almost like your up, down, left, right arrow keys. And then it's got I think it's got like an enter command and some other stuff. And then I did like a macro where if I'm on the master, actually I could probably show you guys this. If I'm on, where's my, fire this up real fast and just show you. So if we're here, this is my Ableton setup. So I have to have this master strip selected. And if I hit the button, if I hit this button on here, I've got it programmed as launch. And what it'll do is it'll start actually on one clip. And I'm gonna make sure, I'm all muted, so hopefully this doesn't play anything. But you know what? I'm sorry, guys. I'm having a network issue because all my stuff's disconnected. This is all connected over the network right now, USB over network. Anyway. I'm supposed to be able to hit this button and it will start the scene and then move down one to the next one and be ready to go. And then when I hit it again, it would do the next thing and the next one and the next one. But there's also arrows programmed in here to where I can go up and down or move over to one of these other ones. And as long as I could see kind of what's showing on here, I'm able to do a extremely dynamic performance. So, or I can make it as rigid as I want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I can play it exactly the same every time, or I can change it up.
That makes it a little more gratifying while you're playing because you can have a little more control to go where you want, even though it's an established track.
Sure. Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
and that's part of the fun. And like you could actually read the crowd, and if a crowd's like getting off on a certain section, you could hang there a little bit longer than maybe the arrangement said. You know, if it was in stone. So that's
it's like
I love that.
Like a real-time remix of your own thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I love about Machine Plus, is that, you know, you can do clip launching in it. So it's basically, or at least the way I've got my little live set up, you know, you can do kind of the same thing. You can mix and match. You can wait longer. You know, I don't have a foot switch for things, which might be pretty cool, but I don't think that's happening for me, for Machine Plus. I don't think. But
your whole setup, Tim, is amazing, and what you're able to do with that, and how you've figured out your workflow, I'm super impressed with how you've gone about your whole performance aspects.
I just think it's major cool that you've had this design on your brain, and you knew, you know, what you needed it to get done, and then here you are having success at it, man. I mean, that's just fantastic. I love that.
That's exciting, and the cool thing is, it's like instead of spending a bunch of time just working on the production and then spitting out a song and then releasing it and no one listened to it, well, at least now I can have some fun. You know, I can have some more fun with it. But the other thing is, like,
it's true.
You do the upfront work with this type of a setup, and now all I got to do is some sound design and some, you know, make some sequences, and I've already got some melodies that I want to use. So I kind of have a game plan for how I'm going to move forward with the track production on these. And I'm hoping it'll be a lot faster even than what it would be if I just sat here and made a track. If that makes sense, because all the other stuff is set up already. Everything's already set up now.
So you've totally, you know, it's like what I've done too. You've totally built a brand new instrument. And so first you have to work out all the kinks of making the instrument even freaking work. And then once it's working and now it's being, you know, stable enough, now you start to develop your workflow with that new instrument, and it'll just, you'll start getting better at it and faster. It'll take less amount of time. You know, those first few things though, it's just like, wow, somewhere back in a former life, I liked making music, you know?
Right. Well, then kind of we were talking about workstations earlier with the K2500X that I grabbed, but this is like a big, giant custom workstation now that I've got out there.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
So that's pretty cool.
It's very cool.
So what have been some of the challenges in getting that together? What's been the difficulties of it?
Well, figuring out what synths I want to use initially was a problem, and I've got most of them kind of what I think I want to use in there, but I bought another keyboard stand for in there, another 2-tier, because I had two 2-tier stands and then one 1-tier before I pulled the 2600 out. So I got another 2-tier stand, and I'm thinking about throwing the AN1X in there as well. I was gonna probably maybe kind of sort of use the DO5, but I'm thinking like if I want some DO5 sounds, I'll use the plugins from Roland, and because that AN1X has got some killer sounds on it too. So I'm thinking, so that was a big problem, is figuring out what synths do I want to use in there, because I've done some other videos where I did little similar stuff to this, but not full on like it's a full Marshall production, you know, like it's a full song of mine. These were more kind of advanced jams, I guess, or loops or whatever. And I tried analog stuff. I tried a mixture, and I think for the style I'm going for, which is more kind of classic trance tunes, I need 90s VA. So I got a lot of 90s VAs in there, or 90s, early 2000s. And then,
sorry if I can interject real quick. You had the 2600 in there, and what replaced it?
The chord radius.
Radius, okay.
Yeah.
Because of presets?
Presets, and the radius actually does some pretty solid bass lines. I was going to use the 2600 as bass, but it's full on analog, and I can't go and change sounds really quick.
Yeah.
So I need something that's programmable that I can program sounds and then call them up with program change messages. So I decided to make that change because of that. I would love to use a 2600. It's one of the coolest instruments I have, but it's not going to work for live. Not for what I'm doing.
Right. Yeah, that's too quirky.
Yeah, it's super cool though. I love it. Maybe I'll sample it and I can do some sampling with some of the sounds from it. Yeah. So that's always an option. Harness the power of radius. That's if anyone has a radius or knows about the radius, like the first preset on there is this crazy. Oops, sorry, Chris. You just did it again. There it is.
Take that.
Harness the power. The first preset on the radius is this vocoded like 4-timbral pad thing that says harness the power of radius, and it's kind of cool. But I love it. So one of the cool things though, guys, is like some of these old synths, like you can go on YouTube and they actually have videos on YouTube from then. This is early days of YouTube. You can see some of the crazy, goofy little demos that these guys were doing with those instruments when they were new and they were exciting. Where everyone was like, well, I did one of the first videos that like on my channel that got really big was my demo of the SH201. Apparently there was a lot of interest in that synth when it came out because that video got like over 100,000 plays back then.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
You know, those funny well, you wouldn't see them on YouTube, but like the 90s, early 2000s kind of promo videos that the companies did are just absolutely hilarious now. To go back and see some of that stuff. Or if you can't find any of them, watch any modern Roland promo video, and it's just as hilarious.
Oh, yeah, like the guy sitting on the bus with his what was it, the XM, with no cables hooked up to him. Like, what is he doing? What's he doing with that?
And you have to, if it's any of the groove boxes or synthesizers, like you have to be at a skate park at one of those scenes.
Oh yeah,
like just sitting there with your headphones, like one headphone on, like
walking around in the forest with your synthesizer for some reason where there's no power.
The guitar ones are like even more dated. Like you see there, it's like the lit up stage, like it's 1988. Some dude with a bandana.
One of the funniest ones because it's so cringe is the Andromeda A6. Go look up the official promo from Alesis on that. It's hilariously awful. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Oh man.
Yeah. What about you, Chris? What were some of your trials and tribulations over the last year?
Yeah. So, just pulling it up here. Yeah, I'd say like I learned more than I produced this last year. One of the probably the most interesting experiences I had was the collaboration projects that I got to work on, and so several of those was with the two of you and Jamie and doing those tracks, and then also one I did with Brian, and. You got to get the keys to the Lamborghini, Chris. Those were really fun, and I enjoyed working on them. I had really worked in bands, and so I was used to working with people live and in person. When you were working stuff out, you could bounce stuff off each other immediately. I mean, you're sitting 5 feet apart and you're like, hey, what about this? Or try this part. Like, what if we change this here? And it gets done really quickly. And you can kind of work those things out, and then you can practice them and like through jamming kind of work out where things will go otherwise. And so working strictly in the box and over long distance, between Cincinnati and Nashville and Tampa and Blackpool and, sharing stuff back and forth and getting it done. It was an interesting experience, but it was, I have to say, like, these experiences were very positive as far as getting stuff done and people working together for the greater good of the song. And that was wonderful. I think that was good and could kind of see like how it could work, because it'd been seen in more recent years, these kind of international bands doing stuff. And then, some of these bands will go out on tour, and eventually they got to get together and rehearse and do that kind of stuff. But a lot of people are making albums with people in other countries, and I found that fascinating. I think that went back quite a long ways. There was a more of a I don't know what you would call them, pop or something. There was a band called the Postal Service, and I remember hearing about their story, and they got the name because back in the days where they were mailing projects to one another. I don't know what they were using, discs or something. And so one person would work on something, mail it to somebody else, whatever, a week or two later, they would get it, work on it, send it to the next person and all that kind of stuff. And it made me appreciate how bands are able to work now, and that, we were able to work on projects. And basically, when I'd get done doing something, I would upload it to Dropbox or the Microsoft one they were using. And you guys would have access to what I did immediately. And when you guys would finish stuff, I'd have access to it immediately and able to work in such a pretty fast. And then being that we were able to talk about things over Messenger, and there was a lot of immediacy to it. It's not quite the same immediacy or directness as sitting in a room together. And I do miss that, but being that, our access to other really great musicians sometimes is a little more difficult in the town that we live, that this, doing things online and over Dropbox and working on projects together, it was really a good experience. And I really enjoyed it. We put a lot of work into those tracks, and it was a lot of fun to be able to do that and to kind of use different skills. And one of the things that I've been, working on more and wanting to work on more, I would say I haven't gotten to just because, is mixing, is working on mixing and mastering tricks. And some of that, again, has been more about the learning process during this time. Some friends had been, a couple of my buddies have been making some tracks together. And so I said, hey, they don't like doing any of the mixing stuff. I said, hey, send them to me. This is what I need from you. Give me, MIDI if you use MIDI, and give me the direct signals if you record guitars and basses, and just send me everything else. Send me how you've mixed it, and then let me play with it. And, get to practice on some other material that's not my own, where I'm, emotionally connected to it. And so that's been kind of a fun thing. And then just learning, seeing how you guys work, in particular on mixing and arrangement stuff, because I've done an extraordinary amount of arrangement for, live musicians. And so to work on arrangement within a DAW, which is a different set of skills, some of the basics will be the same as far as like what makes a song good, but then you have all these other tricks, and like some of the work that Tim did on that first track, and how he, how you creatively move things around and found certain things to accent and put out. That during that whole time, I was just taking that in and learning from it. So those have been probably, most of the experiences this year. And I've had some energy and like fatigue stuff going on. So that's made life more difficult to sit down and work on something. So songwriting hasn't been as much of a priority for me, but I've wanted to work more on mixing. So that's probably kind of where I've been in 2022, I guess.
That's cool, but that's a good place to be, if you have that mindset, because it can be a frustrating place to be too if you don't have that perspective, but clearly you do, which is the perspective of, well, I might not be cranking stuff out and as productive as I have been in the past, but I'm inputting, right? You're learning, and you're going to be able to take that stuff and pull it forward, and then so when you do have a chance or the ability to be more productive, you've upped your game as soon as that happens, because you've learned a lot. So it's kind of hard to think in those terms sometimes, because you feel like it's a step backwards almost, because you're not doing anything. I'm not being productive. What the hell's happening? But you are learning, and so you do have that perspective, Cryss, which is great. And I'm reiterating that for everybody, because I think we can all learn from that moment of like, it's cool. I'm just getting input right now, and it's going to come out, and I'm going to be able to use it, and I'll be even better, right, than I was.
Yeah, I think we're more used to kind of juggling those things in a band situation. And so you're expecting that, there's going to be different things going on with people, and you got to kind of duck and weave a little bit and like, let's make this work. But when it's all on yourself and you're just in this room yourself, like when you have those kind of plans, like I want to accomplish this thing, it's a little bit harder to see when plans change. And so I think that's kind of one of the things I had to work on. It's like, okay, now this is another time where I've got to see what's available to me, and I've got to make changes on the fly, and to be able to make the most of what's happening right now.
When
so,
you did
a lot of
really great, you did a really great job on the compilation, or on the collaborative works that we all did, adapting to that. I think you did a great job.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. And I think, this is something that could probably, like, people that are having a hard time and are feeling uninspired and stuff, like, sometimes you just got to roll and change the game up a bit. And so this is a good opportunity. And I'm, for myself, I'm grateful that, I've got you guys that are collaborators, and, Brian as well, that it's like, well, we can try something different. And, one of the things is like people just have different ways of working, and you've got to learn kind of how everybody operates. And that's a skill in of itself that you're not directly thinking about as far as music. You're like, well, I know these modes or, these time signatures or whatever, but a big part of making music, especially with other people, is like kind of figuring people out and how they work and what's good for them. Like what's gonna when you give back, what's going to be good for them, so that'll charge them up to get going, because they're also doing that for you.
Exactly.
Yep.
Trying to leave everyone a little bit of room.
Yeah.
Right.
And that can get a little
That's key.
Tough sometimes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If there's any ego, there's always a little ego, right? But like, that's where you have to check it, because that's right, Marshall. Like, leave some room for somebody else to do something,
Mm-hmm.
Like that one guy I collaborated with, who shall remain nameless. And I sent him this extremely wide open kind of just some chord changes, and just said, all right, because I thought we'd go back and forth, just me and him. And when I got his first work back, that track was completely full and done, and there was no elbow room, no way to think about anything else. So I just said, cool, I'll do a mix of it, and you do a mix of it, and we'll put them out there. So yeah, that's exactly how, like, well, basically green that guy was. Like, he didn't have any idea that he needed to just do a little touch, and then let me add a touch, and then he can add a touch to that. And we, with the three of us, and with Jamie Morden, we didn't have that problem whatsoever.
No.
But it's just a funny anecdote, because, like, it was just like wall to wall parts. I'm like, oh, well, cool, great.
I think it worked pretty well with us because we all kind of had our parts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys were like, Marshall, give us some drum and bass stuff, and then it just went to you guys, and then Jamie did some pads, and Tim reworked the arrangement, did some other stuff, got some guitar from Cryss and some other synth sounds. What was that plugin you used for that again? That I thought it was the Matriarch.
Oh yeah.
I think I had done that on the
The Arturia.
no, it was the Moog, one of the Moog. So it wasn't the Model D. It was the modular Moog app. I don't remember what it's called.
I thought it sounded amazing, and had you not told me, I would have thought it was the Matriarch. And I was like,
yeah,
Matriarch.
That was a patch that I had made and I had worked on. And I was like, man, this is a really great sounding patch, and they had ported it so that you could actually use it on you know, Mac computers rather than just iOS devices. So I've done that with the Mini Moog recently. And I was just like really itching to use that. And then when it came time to the video, I'm like, I'm not sitting in front of the computer for this.
Right.
So what's the synthesizer that sounds closest to that? Well, the Matriarch.
Yeah. Well, it was a Moog too, you know.
Yeah. Well, and AI came up with all the parts anyway. We didn't write any of them. We just mimicked what AI came up with.
Exactly.
Kind of mimicked it. So
we're just
took a second.
3 guys from Vietnam, you know.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Tim? We're kind of running short on time. I want to make sure we get to you and your challenges for the year. What did you make out? What was your big sticking points and things you overcame?
It's been the most tumultuous year that I've lived possibly ever in my entire life. And part of it was, well, really most of it, I think, was just connected to the passing of my mom and the challenges that presented while still trying to maintain my goals and my gigs, you know, the stuff that was concrete that I had for work, and then the stuff that I was trying to use to, you know, to move ahead. So that made it just an incredibly hard year. But, you know, it was a year to learn from. So I'd like to tie that statement into just what Cryss was saying in terms of, like, I wasn't overly productive, which was extra frustrating to me because of my 2 previous years. I had created more electronic music than I had in the past 30 years, probably, being a professional drummer. But having a moment to do that because of COVID, I had a couple of really, really productive years. Yeah, and I slowly built up an arsenal of analog gear. And so it was a blast. And I was really able to crank out a lot. As soon as my mom got sick, I had to shift my focus over to taking care of her and flying back and forth to Texas multiple times, many, many times. And so I just didn't have the same amount of time to work. So I had to take that moment to reflect and say, right, I am still moving ahead. Don't feel like I'm waylaid, you know. I'm not stuck in a whirlpool. I will get out of this. And when I do, I'll have a little more to bring to the plate. Mm-hmm. So that's my biggest takeaway from last year has just been, you know, the personal challenges of the family. And then, you know, maintaining my gigs and, you know, live gigs and my session work and flying back and forth. And then, you know, we started Thru Port in June. Mm-hmm. So Thru Port Collective started, which was fun, and just, you know, added a little more of a challenge to finding out how that worked and if we wanted to do it or not, and how much time it took, and, you know. But so I still ended up managing to do, you know, get with you guys and creating this show, and then writing a bunch of songs with my band, and then learning a lot from my Synth Night epic failure, where I played out my first solo synth live gig ever, and it was quiet, completely quiet, because nothing worked. Actually, I played for about 30, 45 seconds, things worked, and then they just choked.
You know, that's got me freaked out, though, because I've spent all this time putting this really complex rig together, and I'm hearing about your thing, and I'm like, man, when I go and get out there, That's probably gonna be a disaster.
I think it might is the thing, but
Yeah.
like maybe like do a warm up gig, like do something that's sort of low and under the radar and
Like a
take it
birthday
out.
party.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
take so you get a chance to see what fails if it's you or if it's the rig or if it's both. You could learn from that before you're on a gig where you're going like, yeah, I really need to sound tight on this.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and the other
so-
thing too that maybe is not thought of is that there's been so many people that have been getting into these live jam events. Both here and over in the UK. Like we've seen a lot of our friends start doing them, and for people that have mainly been doing stuff at home and jamming, they don't realize that the people element there, even if the equipment all works, the people element makes it different, and they might even get nervous. So it's another probably a good idea to keep things as far as the rig goes pretty simple, because you don't know what the psychological effect of the crowd is. Like, I mean, if you've been rock banding it for decades and you're like, oh, it's just another day and it's just more people and they're kind of blank faces out there. But I think if you haven't experienced that, like people get, afraid of speaking, even something for small events like a eulogy at a funeral or something,
Right.
they get real nervous. And that's one kind of thing to take into account, that if you're not thinking about it, you've been making YouTube videos and stuff like that. That's something that a lot of people could probably be made aware of, like that you'll probably be dealing with that as well as whatever technical gear problems that you have.
Exactly, and you will be. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
You will be dealing with both. There is no possibility you will. There'll be something that doesn't go right. So it's just a matter of like you just got to jump in and start swimming, and the sooner you can kind of figure that stuff out and get over yourself or how to deal with yourself and whatever gear failure you're having, the sooner you can get on to just actually enjoying it, because that's the point of it. You're supposed to be having fun. Like, I want to go out and have a good time. I don't want to be freaking out about things. I want to have a good time. I want to make some music and have fun. So that just requires doing it and doing it,
Yeah, part of that is exactly what happened to you. It's like where you have to have some epic failures at some point to kind of get over that fear. You're like, everything went out. I could do nothing about it. Everybody was just standing there looking at me. I'm still here, and I'll be playing next week. So I guess, the world didn't end, really.
No, I learned a lot from it, and about how to protect myself from bad AC power and people that are powering things up at the same time, and doing stupid stuff that I wasn't paying attention to because I was more concerned about my rig, and I wasn't paying attention to that kind of real basic stuff, which I should have been, but then I learned it. So, I got the a voltage regulator. Like, that ain't going to happen again now.
Okay, writing this down. Voltage regulator.
Get yourself a voltage regulator. Yeah. I mean, and so I came back. I booked another gig. I played it on the 17th, I guess it was, of December. And
awesome.
Guess what? Success. So, like, after absolutely nothing, everything worked good. The only things that happened were really about me, not doing the right stuff, no equipment failure, none of it. Everything worked fine. But it took, August to December to get it all together.
Yeah.
But worth it, right? Because, I mean, I came back and went, victory is mine. Just to get to play a gig like that and have it come off. But it took a lot of egg on the face there to begin with.
Yeah. Well, that should be a topic we come back to, like playing live, prepping people to play live, especially a lot of musicians have gotten into music during lockdown and COVID and all that stuff, and they're now having opportunities to play out, what kind of things to expect, because there's so many variables about that people don't think about, like lighting, how are you going to be able to see my stuff? I can light however I want in here, but when I got on the stage, if it's sunny, am I going to see the readouts on my pedals or my synthesizers or whatever? Like, there's all sorts of little things like that.
or
There
even
you
just
go.
like having bringing a stage with you. Even I have this whole LED screen thing. Like, am I going to bring that too? Like, it probably depends on the venue and how much time I have, and like,
Totally,
yeah.
absolutely. But
So
but I
that,
mean, you want to be able to. Sorry, I'm not interrupting there.
you're good. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, because you do want to be able to do smaller venues too, so you could play a little more often. You know what I mean, and not bring the screen and not do that. Maybe just do a smaller version and not bring a stage and go. Because that's just like, good Lord.
That's just we're getting into kind of ridiculous territory there. I think, especially starting out, I probably don't need to be doing live shows, bringing all that along with everything else.
Starting
pyrotechnics.
But
you'll end up there. Yeah.
The goal is to do a live show that trumps the giant pyramid with Daft Punk from Coachella or whenever that was.
Oh yeah.
It was like epic. No one would. I had heard that like they commissioned Daft Punk to play, and they just went to town. And no one knew what they were going to do, and then they show up. It's this giant freaking pyramid.
I mean,
yeah.
As big as you can dream.
Exactly.
That's what you can do, and I'm with you. I'd love to end up doing some kind of huge shows like that. That'd be amazing. Here's something for live that you need. It's battery powered. It clips on.
Oh, send me a link to that.
And it has lights, and it's got a dimmer. And you just clip that because you just want that right above your work area.
I was going to say, though, so the Daft Punk, they had the triangle. Dead Mouse has the cube. I think I'm going to have to go with some kind of
circle.
Pink Floyd's already got the circle.
Okay,
Okay, so I got to be like an octagon or a trapezoid or something.
Trapezoid's all you, man. It's trapezoid.
Yeah. Trapezoid.
I mean, that's it. Trapezoid is your middle name.
I think that's about it here, gentlemen. We're kind of out of time, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, we can always come back and talk about where, the projection into this year and what the things are more if we want to do that. So,
yeah, and I definitely like the idea of and especially for you, Tim, letting us know some of the ins and outs of doing the live stuff. I'd really like to hear about that. So hopefully we can do that.
Yeah. No, it's a great idea, and I'm definitely jumping in the trenches. I've got a live gig booked with the Penn Jones Conspiracy for the 19th, and so that rig, which is, you can't really see, but like that's a whole new rig now. So last month was this rig back here with the modular. Now I'm learning this one because we've never played these songs before, and there are 10 new songs that we've never played before. I mean, we wrote them. I forgot about them the day, the second we walk out of the studio. You don't really think about them too much. And so it's like, okay, cool. I've got a lot to learn. So, yeah, I'll definitely be happy to share all of my failures with you guys.
Hopefully I can learn from all those and just make different mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be the goal.
Yeah, well, and then I'll learn from those.
There you go.
That's how it works. That's what we do here at Thru Port Collective, and thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah, thank you everyone for hopping in here. We've seen quite a few new members on not just the YouTube channel, but also the Thru Port Collective Facebook group. If you guys aren't over there, feel free to hop in over there. That's where I post my crazy AI stuff over there, and it's a good time. And so it's good to see the channel and the Facebook group growing, which is nice. So thank you everyone for supporting that and subscribing and watching and participating. Thank you very much.
Yeah, hit the like button and all that stuff. And
yeah, please subscribe and like, and we'll be on next Wednesday with more musical antics, antidotes, stories, and experiences, and we love yours too. So yeah, thanks for being here and chatting with us, and yeah, thanks for all the new members and people subscribing. We appreciate it. All right, happy 2023, everybody.